Welcome to Buckets. This is Action Network's WNBA betting podcast presented by BetMGM. I'm your host, Maria Marino, back here with Jim Turvey. Jim, you were not scared away after an hour plus conversation that we had a day ago, sort of just resetting our expectations for the WNBA season. That's up on the feed right now if you want to check it out and want to kind of get an outlook on where every team stands right now. But we're getting right back into the daily betting routine. So this is our best episode. Well, that was a tongue twister. Best bets episode. WNBA back following the Olympic break. We only have about a month left in the regular season. So Jim, a few good games on Thursday, and then we also have a couple we can look ahead to on Friday and Saturday.
Yeah, cannot wait. We did, like you said, we did the big picture. We went long, but that's I prefer that. I like an in-depth long episode. Hopefully, folks appreciated that. I had a really fun time recording. That was one of the better episodes we've done. So give that a listen if you haven't already. But this will be the popcorn version. This will be the quick hits. Give you some bets in out. We're moving along. So this is for the folks who only have a few minutes here and there between putting kids to sleep and doing dishes and all that. So this is the quick hitter.
Yeah. Hopefully whatever you have going on, you have a little bit of time to hear us out. So let's get right into it. And the first game Thursday, the Mercury laying 3.5 at Chicago. This is an 8 p.m. Eastern tip. You can watch it on Amazon Prime. You have a pick for this one, Jim.
Do indeed. Yeah, this season I have been relying more and more on a model that, us, the BetTree Wins crew that we've been working to put together for sides and totals as well as player props. But obviously that can't be the be all and end all. You got to kind of like look at the model and then also kind of be cognizant of spots and things like that. So this is a twofer. It's one where the model likes Chicago plus 3.5 and all of the signs, all of the stuff that wouldn't be included in that also really like Chicago, because you have Chicago, the team that probably came out got the most rest in the Olympic break. Didn't send any folks over. They're going to be entirely well rested. They have a young team too. These legs are going to be as fresh as you're going to find. On the flip side of it, you have the Phoenix Mercury, who sent Diana Taurasi, who's already over 40 and amazing. She's still playing, but she's those legs can't be fresh. Right. Brittany Griner, who's had about as tough of a multi-year stretch in terms of just wear and tear on a body as you can find. She's coming back from overseas. And Kalia Copper, who was arguably the U.S.'s best player down the stretch of the gold medal game. She's going to be motivated for the Chicago game for sure. And, maybe of the three, she'd be the one that I'd expect to kind of come out firing. But this Phoenix team, they're already a little bit old. They're already a little bit creaky. Beck Allen, like we talked about on yesterday's pod, she's going to be out. This Chicago team, this is, I like the spread here. I also like spreading the money line. This Chicago team is just, so plucky all season. They did trade away Marina Mabrey, so we do need to consider that a little bit. But in getting Rachel Banham and Mariah Jefferson, they have two players who are going to be pretty key towards increasing their depth. So I think there isn't going to be a massive drop-off, maybe a little bit on the offensive side. I might skew towards looking at an under here as well. Those tired legs for Phoenix, plus a Chicago team that's probably going to be a little bit more lower scoring with Marina Mabrey swapped out for Jefferson and Banham. But yeah, this is screaming, everything about this is screaming Chicago for me.
Right. And to your point, having the rest, having the preparation, we've been seeing so many teams going through practices and whatnot, even while the Olympics were still going on. So to have all of your key players there for those types of practices, I think that's super valuable. And I'm glad you answered this, because I was going to ask, would you want to go Chicago money line here? I'm seeing it at plus 138, and I'm noticing that Chicago is 10-14, both straight up and against the spread.
Yeah, I definitely would lean to the Chicago side of money line. I think I like the spread even more just because, Phoenix, if anything, is going to have that motivation to get across the finish line, being a little bit higher up in the standings. But the other thing about this is Chicago's got one of the best 3-point defenses in the league. Phoenix, with their new coach, they've been really liking to shoot threes. So if they're relying on threes and Chicago's got a good 3-point defense, even matchup wise, it's leaning towards Chicago. So I think definitely spread money line a bit as well. All things Chicago for me on this game on Thursday.
Very nice. And by the way, I had to double check this, but pretty sure if I'm reading correctly, these teams have not yet played each other this season, which is interesting. I always like to try to see how the prior meetings went.
Yep.
This time, no data. So could go either way in terms of who that actually benefits. But all right, so that's one pick down, one game down. Let's keep it moving. We got the Mystics visiting the Lynx. The Lynx are laying 8.5 or so. This is also an 8 p.m. Eastern tip on Thursday. And on our sort of futures reset episode, you were all about the Mystics, Jim.
Oh, Mystics. The time is now. I wanted them at the beginning of the season. Brittany Sykes got hurt. Shakira Austin got hurt. Carly Samuelson got hurt. They just had all these injuries stack up. They all got healthy over the Olympic break. They did send a few folks over to play. Julie Van. Now, are we going to give her the Van Loo or the Van Low? I heard that in the States she still wants to be Van Loo, but her name's Van Low, so I kind of feel like we should say it correctly. I don't know. It's so confusing.
I didn't hear that part. I was all prepared to say Van Low because I trust Noah Eagle and LaChina Robinson and their overseas sources. I don't know why you would want to be referred to as something else in the States. I don't know. Maybe you're trying to like abide by the dialect, but yeah, I don't know about that one.
Yeah, well, either way, she's awesome, but she was over there. She'll be back. So I'm on the Mystics here. I'm on the spread. This number opened at 10. Hopefully you got it at 10, but I still like it at 8.5 where it is here. And I'm even gonna sprinkle the money line. I think that this Washington team is a team that I'm gonna be sprinkling money lines throughout the rest of the season if they keep these players in the lineup. Now it could well be that they use any excuse to kind of sit folks here and there, especially Shakira Austin. It seems like they've been using that approach with her all season. But getting Sykes back is massive. This team, fully healthy, to me is kind of like a spunky 500 team. And I think we've seen that in the very limited minutes when everyone's all around for them. They are kind of this like about, net even team. So I'm going to be looking at Minnesota or at Washington here, fading Minnesota, who sent over several Olympians. Defisa Collier was a very key part of Team USA. Alana Smith, very key for Australia. Bridget Carlton was even key for Canada. And then we talked again, not to keep referencing yesterday's episode, but we talked about how they also had a head coach who was over there. So while Eric Thibault was over here kind of scheming up ways to make the end of this season as valuable for Washington as possible, Cheryl Reeve was over in Paris trying to figure out a way to get us a gold. So the Olympic rest advantage, plus just Washington being a team that I really want to be on down the stretch. I'm once again kind of all things underdog in this game here on Thursday.
Well, look, the Mystics, even with all of those key players out, like Brittany Sykes and Shakira Austin, Carly Samuelson, best ATS record in the W, 16-8-1. So a very pesky team, and we're actually converting some of those ATS wins into outright wins, I would say, prior to the Olympic break. By the way, Washington did cover when they played Minnesota back on July 6th. It was a 74-67 victory. Nafisa Collier did not play in that game. So I wanted to look at some props for this one just because I liked the idea that we had a game to look at, a prior meeting, and something, I was poking around, and something that stood out to me was our old friend Bridget Carlton to go over 2.5 threes. I saw it at plus 120. So she was 3 of 8 the last time they played against Washington. She made 3 threes in 5 out of 7 July games. You could go even back further than that, and she has quite a bit of volume. I kind of like that she played for Team Canada, but they didn't make it out of group play, so maybe a good mix of sort of being in game mode, but also getting some rest, not being super taxed and like playing in medal games and things of that nature. So naturally, Jim, I have to ask you, because again, you and your Bet She Wins crew use as like a model for props. So are you on board with that?
I am, yeah. To take people behind the curtain, you shot me a text before and like, what do you think of this? And I was like, all right, looked it up. We have it at 2.8. So I think you said you got the over 2.5 at plus money. Really like that number. Yeah. I really like your theory here on, rest plus not rust. I think she did kind of weave, she threaded that needle pretty well. She's been one who throughout the season, her usage has only gone up and up and up. I mean, that Commissioner's Cup game, she'll be a hero in my eyes for, the rest of her life, I'll always be a Bridget Carlton fan. So regardless of that, I think I love what you pointed out about the July games. I love what you pulled for the last matchup. And then, like you said, the model has it at 2.8. So definitely some room for the over 2.5, even if it were to flip from the plus 120 that you got even into like, even money or even slightly, minus 110 or something like that.
I feel like we have established such a bond with Bridget Carlton that I
Yes.
typically refer to her as Bridge. I'm just like, oh, Bridge, Bridge. She did this, she did that. And also, interestingly, like when I was kind of poking around at the props and I was looking at the Mystic side, I found myself hesitating just because we have so many players being reintroduced into the lineup. Like I thought Ariel Atkins like points total looked intriguing, but at the same time, I'm like, but with these other stars kind of reintroduced, it just gave me a little bit of pause. So, and then Bridge, if she's scoring, it's via the three ball in this offense anyway, from what we've seen from Minnesota. That's sort of her role. Whereas like a Kayla McBride, who again, I thought her threes looked enticing, but it's not like her role is limited to that. Not that Bridge is limited, but
Yeah.
it's very much focused on the three ball. So that's why I went there. And let's keep it moving, shall we? All right. So the New York Liberty visiting LA, 9 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Thursday. Liberty laying double digits. I'm seeing 10.5 right now. And this is another case of a lot of Olympians. Each team not only had 4 Olympians, but both head coaches were coaching in the Olympics. Sandy Brondello, of course, for Australia. And then I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure Kurt Miller was on the Team USA staff with Cheryl Reeves. So I don't see necessarily an advantage one way or the other. These two teams played twice in June. Liberty won by 7 and 10 respectively, which were both LA covers. Any thoughts?
Yeah, this is a little bit of a stay away for me. I would typically skew if this was just like kind of your average run of the mill game during the season. I would be potentially eyeing a Liberty first half spread here. I want to wait and see. I think that we will probably get the full lineup for the Liberty, but we do have a big game. We'll touch on that in a second. That they'll be looking ahead to Saturday's game a little bit. So I do think that there's a chance for a backdoor cover type thing. So to me, this is a wait and see how Sandy plays Stewie and Sab. See if how big a load JJ gets. I think that was one thing that had caught your eye. I don't know. Maybe it makes sense to bring that up right now, actually, about Jonquel.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll touch on the look ahead spot. They're playing Vegas on Saturday. But in terms of Jonquel Jones, again, just me sort of perusing the different offerings. And I noticed that in both meetings against LA, JJ had really big games, and her points plus rebounds line I saw at 24.5. Got it at around minus 102, and she went over in both of those meetings. Now, as far as like recent performance, it's a touch up and down, but I feel like, to your point about wanting to see what the Liberty are going to look like after this taxing Olympic break for their stars, I wouldn't be surprised if they go and want to lean on JJ and make that sort of the key game plan, where she's had success against this team before. You brought this up yesterday. Win shares. JJ's kind of up there. She's sneakily, if you want to call it sneakily. I mean, I guess when you compare anything to Asia Wilson, it's sneaky. But, having just a really, really good season this year. And I think that that's going to be key. And not only just coming out of the Olympic break, but in general, I think a directive is, get JJ established in the paint. So yeah, I didn't put as much on this. I did like maybe a quarter unit. So just because this is more of, like you said, a sort of a wait and see type of situation, I'm just kind of easing my way back in. But that was something that I liked. And
I would say one other thing, if you're looking at this game and you're looking at JJ, that potentially could be interesting. Actually, I didn't price this out before I hopped on it. I probably should have, but as you were talking through it, I thought of it. I'll probably, after we get done recording here, see what it looks like. Jonquel to lead the game in either scoring or rebound or anything like that. It kind of plays off the idea that we're thinking that it might be, easing Stewie and Sab back in the lineup and leaning more on JJ. I think we might be able to get a decent number on those JJ to lead the game in X. And I think both of us believe that she will be leaned on heavier down the stretch here. So I would look at those markets as well for Jonquil.
Okay, awesome. And as mentioned, I did want to just touch on this here really quick because as you said, they are playing the Aces on Saturday, 4 p.m. Eastern, CBS. Right now, the Aces, they're home, favored by 2.5. Just a quick thought on that, Jim.
Yeah, this is gonna be awesome. I'm really excited to watch this game. I lean Liberty, and I lean towards playing this game. Sometimes I get a little too cute, and maybe I shouldn't do this, but this game streams to me kind of a blowout one way or the other. I think I kind of want to take a Liberty alt spread. I lean towards the Liberty anyways. I think right now, this second, the Liberty are a better regular season team. I still, if this were the finals, and both teams are healthy, I probably would lean towards the Aces maybe. But the Liberty look really strong right now. They have less of a direct impact from the Olympics. 6 Aces players over there for the Olympics. Again, the Aces aren't stressing these regular season games quite as much, and these games have really tended to be blowouts one way or the other. Ironically, I also lean towards the under in this game. So if you could somehow do like a same game parlay that is the under, but also a Liberty alt spread, and then, maybe throw in the Aces team total under if the algorithm doesn't realize how correlated those two things are, you could really kind of get a pretty nice number there, I think, for an outcome that I think the game script could fit pretty neatly towards a low scoring Liberty blowout, as more likely than its implied odds are going to say.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing in Vegas's favor is that obviously this will be their first game back out of the Olympic break, as opposed to the Liberty already having gone on the road and playing at LA. So I don't know if that's going to make all that much difference, given, to your point, just like all the Olympians that they had and everything else, but something to consider. I'm not sure if you said this already, but New York did beat them by 8 back on June 15th, which was a huge, I think, statement win for New York at the time. Aces, I'm sure, are remembering that. And I think there is a little bit of extra juice between these two teams because they are, I would say, still rivals, given, meeting in the finals last year and whatnot. So definitely curious. This is going to be a really good, I think, measuring stick for the rest of the season, how that pans out. All right. I do want to just touch on our 3 games on Friday as well. But first, want to let everybody know that if you've thought about becoming an Action Pro subscriber, now is the best time to sign up. For less than $10 a month, get a year of Action Pro access across every sport. That includes player prop picks and projection edges from Sean Kerner and his analytics team, Sean Zerillo's projections for baseball, Colin Wilson and Stuckey for college football, access to premium articles from our top experts, and so much more. And Actions podcast listeners can use code POD20 to get an extra $20 off. That's POD20 for $20 off a year of Action Pro. Just visit actionnetwork.com/pricing or follow the link in this episode's description. As promised, Friday, we're back on Ion. And real quick, just want to mention the Storm are favored by 6.5 or so, visiting the Dream at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. You don't have a pick on this one, Jim, so we're not going to spend much time on it. But Seattle did win the one meeting by 9 on July 14th. No Ryan Howard, however. Storm, I think, is a team that we both are very, very intrigued by. Dream, not so much. So, yeah, we'll leave it at that. But the next game...
We have a no dream policy on the podcast, unless it demands it.
No dreaming allowed.
No dreams.
No, just kidding. Yeah, we might be a little biased considering our preseason plays on them. I am, they are right there in the playoff mix, so it's not out of the realm of possibility that they could knock out like the Sky or whatever, especially considering how this trade goes with the Sky, but we shall see. But moving on, we have the Mercury visiting the Fever. Definitely looking forward to this one. Fever, I'm seeing favored right now by 3.5, but you grabbed this, Jim, at -1, and I hope you're following Turvy Bets on the Action app because, for this reason specifically.
Yeah, this number came out. It was pretty wild, in part because I think this number now, 3.5, is around where I would have it without considering any of the Olympic stuff. But this is going to be a bad schedule spot for Phoenix. They play on Thursday, so this is a back-to-back on the road in Indiana. And this is a Fever team that after they had that just hellacious schedule to start was playing like around a 500 level team, maybe a little bit worse, but right around there. And Phoenix hasn't shown themselves to be all that much of a plus net rating team. They have a lot of talent, but it hasn't really ever come together to really look like all that great of a team. So for me, considering the schedule spot, I would assume that their Olympians coming back are going to sit. They aren't going to play back to backs. Maybe Cleo would, but BG and DT definitely aren't. The question becomes which game do they play, which game do they sit potentially.
Right.
But even if they were to play, I think that opening number -1 again. Hopefully you grabbed that number was going to be good no matter what. At 3.5. I think it's around the right number if Phoenix is all playing, but I think there's a decent chance they might not play. So I still would lean towards the Indiana side just because of how bad a schedule spot it is for the Mercury.
Right. And I like your point about those big three players could potentially sit one or the other. I mean, that certainly favors your thought on their game against the Sky on Thursday and then going into this back-to-back. And I would say that the wins over Phoenix by Indiana, one on the road and one at home, were probably two of Indiana's best wins of the season. I mean, I remember the one at Phoenix. Pretty sure Caitlin had some turnovers in that, but obviously still played well enough for them to pull that off. And then I feel like the home win was like, I just remember that being a very decisive win. They ended up only winning by 9 or whatever, but like there was a lot of garbage time. So, and once again, the Fever just not having Olympians really, save for Christy Wallace of Australia, who largely wasn't really in the rotation leading into the Olympic break. Like, this is once again just a team that I think probably will benefit from the rest, maybe more than any other team, and in particular, Caitlin Clark, maybe more than any other player. So do like that, returning home, back from the break, and off the heels of like all these incredible, the Indiana Fever, like, did you see they released all of these markers of just how much their franchise, the popularity has grown? So they're riding that wave. A lot of people in the Gainbridge Fieldhouse buying beer. I saw that was a stat on the. They put out like a one sheet with like all the what would you call it? Like markers of increased popularity.
Yeah.
Buying beer. Anyway, one more game to touch on. Also Friday night. So the Sun favored by 5.5, visiting Dallas, 9:30 p.m. Eastern. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, this is an interesting one because we talked about in yesterday's episode how the Sun of the big teams in the W were the least impacted by the Olympics. They sent Alyssa Thomas, and she got minutes, but again, she wasn't carrying a heavy load for the U.S., and she was the only one sent over there. So they're going to be relatively fresh. Dallas theoretically should be pretty fresh as well, in part because they should be returning Satu Sabali, but they've been a little coy with the injury report. I can't quite get a read on if they're saying Maddie Segrest is going to be back within a week, or if they're saying all three of the players with Satu and Jalen Brown as well also are going to be back within the week. So I lean towards Connecticut in general, and I kind of like grabbing the number now because I lean towards it, and I think there's a non-zero chance. I wouldn't say likely, but I say non-zero chance that they sit Satu on this first game back, just to kind of, reintegrate her into the team. She hasn't played all season with them. They might want to practice or two with her there. So I do lean towards the Connecticut side. I also lean towards an over, which is slightly terrifying in any Sun game, given their propensity for throwing up, holding opponents to 50 points and themselves only scoring 70. But this Dallas Wings team is so bad defensively. Even if Sabali's back, I think in the first game she's not going to be able to fully impact it. A total around 160. I'm fine going over with that Wings defense that just it's been historically bad.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm just absolutely fascinated to see how Satu Sabali gets back involved with this team. It's such a shame because I think if they had her in the early part of the season, they wouldn't have plummeted so much to where they just seem like the rest of the season is kind of a punt. But I am curious if they can make a little noise here down the stretch, maybe play spoiler for some other teams. And I do want to shout out our Action Network Discord community, because apparently Dallas released Monique Billings and Odyssey Sims, which I was a little surprised about, because Odyssey kind of like showed up and, you know, she was doing damage. But yeah, I did see that Maddie Segrist is expected back next week. And just one other note, Connecticut has won both meetings, but split against the spread this season. All right, Jim, we talked so much yesterday that I feel like I got to cut us off at this point. So thanks, as always, for joining me. Thanks, everybody, for listening to Buckets, presented by BetMGM. We're going to be back on Tuesday with more best bets. Oh, yeah, back in the saddle of the WNBA season. Jim, thanks again.
Thanks for having me.
Let's get buckets.